Hello and welcome to the Car Care Enough channel. So today we have a 2022 Lexus RX, the last model of the current generation. The new 2023 model has already been announced, and you are probably wondering, why are we looking at the old one that is going out? Well, there's something extremely special about this that many people maybe not have realized by now. For as long as the Lexus RX have existed, which has been a very long time, it has always had a V6 engine, even the hybrid variants. This is the last V6 RX. The new generation that's coming out has 4 cylinders on both the hybrid and the non-hybrid variant. So this makes this a very special model. This is it. You cannot have a V6 RX brand new after this model is gone, replaced by the 23. So in today's video, we're going to take a technical tour of this car. We're going to take a look at the inside, the outside, so you can decide if it is worth it to stick with the old V6, the old model, which is this one, or just wait until the 23 model comes out and there's no more V6. Let's start our technical tour with something not technical, and that is the RX. Ever since it came out, it was always a lovely car for nice people. It was smooth, it was quiet, it was refined, it was not thrilling, it was just a very nice place to be. It calms your soul as you drive, and it does not inspire any sportiness or any of that stuff. For the longest time, that has been because of what's underneath the hood. A very sweet and smooth V6. The first generation had the 3.0, the 1MZ engine, very smooth and quiet. The 330 had the 3.3 liter engine, and then the 350 came out, and it only actually had 2 iterations of the same engine. There was a 2GR FE, and then there's this one, the 2GR FKS, or in the case of hybrid, FXS. Always had a correct numbering. The 330 had a 3.3, the 350 had a 3.5, and life was great. No longer the case with the 23, but that's how it is. Let's talk about this engine a little bit. This is the second and last iteration of this 2GR FKS, or FXS in the case of the hybrid. Very nice engine. There are a few technological advancements that differentiate it from the previous one. In case you're driving an 07, 08 RX 350 and you wonder what's new about this, let's talk about a few differences. This has D4S, which is Toyota or Lexus's direct injection system. And it's not just direct injection. It will have 6 direct injectors, 6 port injectors. So those fears of carbon buildup and all these problems that you hear about with direct injectors, there is none of these problems here, because you have kind of the best of both worlds. Another thing about this engine is, and something that people complain about, it has plastic valve covers. And honestly, from experience, this engine is not new to this generation. It has been out since around 15, 16 and across the Toyota and Lexus lineup. There has not really been cases of problems with the plastic valve covers. Now, some people will say that's not long enough time, and for those people I say, let's visit the BMW land with their plastic valve covers, and that's when things are a little bit different. So it is enough time to say these are well made. Now, there's another plastic component that can be problematic. This engine, for some reason, and nobody can explain exactly the reasoning behind it, it has a heated thermostat to force the thermostat open in certain driving conditions. Doesn't really make sense, and it is actually problematic. There have been a lot of failures in these, but they have a heated thermostat. Now, the variable valve timing system in this, pretty old school, it's oil controlled. However, it is solenoid oil control, not the old school one where the solenoids were on the valve cover. There's a lot of real estate. It's actually a very compact system, and it works really good, and serviceability is very simple. So this is, as you know, you look at this, I'm just going to run a small video of this. You look at this, and it looks like an enormous spaceship that you can't even put your hand in it. You don't know where to check. Things look very complicated. They're actually not complicated, believe it or not. Wait till you see what's coming out in the T24A, and this will look like Old school. This is old school. And this is what's beautiful about this engine. Now, one thing on the hybrid variant, and this is something that has been going on for a while, the hybrid variant has a higher emission rating. So in order to achieve that with this engine, they have EGR, exhaust gas recirculation. Something that some people have horror stories with, but it's here. So far, there has been no problems. Another thing on the hybrid version, you have the inverter sitting big and proud under the hood. That is one of the components. And then that leads us into the transmission conversation on these RXs. The non-hybrid has an 8-speed. You will hear some horror stories about them, but these are limited to the early years when the 8-speed came out, not really the later years. Although, one thing to say, it is a little bit clunky. It'll shift, it'll rev up, it just doesn't feel natural like a 6-speed, for example. That could be annoying to some. It annoys me. So perhaps if you're considering one, that is something you want to look into. But this one has an eCVT transmission. And many people will stop right there. Okay, we're not buying this, it has a CVT. You could not be more wrong if that is the case. Hear me out. The eCVT in Toyota and Lexus hybrids is not a standard CVT. It is completely different. It only has the name CVT because it has the operating principle on paper of a CVT, but nothing else. This, in my book, as a mechanic, as someone who have worked on these cars this long, one of the best transmissions ever made. The failure rate on these is so low that they just don't stock them. Nobody has them. No, you have to special order the transmission if there is ever an issue, which is super rare. If you have concerns with this transmission, it is solid. This hybrid system is actually in the later stages. This is one of the best hybrid systems you can ever buy until they update it. Now, one thing interesting, this generation RX, it's behind on technology, on everything actually. Usually, all the updates to this platform, which is, by the way, this is shared with the Highlander, is exactly the same underneath, even technology-wise. Usually the RX was first, being the premium model, the higher priced one, but in this generation, it fell behind. 2020 Highlander got updated. The hybrid version dropped the V6. It has a 4-cylinder, which is an excellent 4-cylinder. Makes sense in the hybrid. We'll talk more about that when we drive this thing. But in the non-hybrid variant, still had the same V6. But now, 2023, they're all dropping the V6. There's no more V6 in the Highlander, and there is no more V6 here. But having driven the Highlander with a 4-cylinder hybrid, it makes sense. So I am not concerned about the hybrid model of the RX. I am, however, slightly concerned about that promise of sweet, smooth, comfortable ride of the RX being compromised by a very shouty inline-4 turbo. The hybrid model will not be so much, but the non-hybrid model, I do have concerns. So this is something to keep in mind. And with that, let's put this car on the lift, let's look underneath it, and continue our technical tour. Let's take a look underneath the Lexus RX 2022 model. You notice one thing, there's no covers, at least in the hybrid model. In the non-hybrid, there's a few more covers. But the one thing is ease of access. This is something with luxury cars that most people assume that this is going to be a nightmare to fix. And you know what? It is not. As complicated as it looks from the top, this is what I was talking about. There's all kinds of space that I can work and look at everything. Nothing is difficult here. And then drain plug is right here, oil filter is right here, super simple, exhaust is right here, here's an oxygen sensor. Things are very simple here, and there's all kinds of space. And in the hybrid model, things are even better because you don't have a transfer case for all-wheel drive. There's no drive shaft. There's none of that. And we're going to talk about the all-wheel drive in a little bit. And this is the hybrid transmission. Now, in the 8-speed transmission, you'll also have no oil pan. It'll be in the front. The 8-speed has its oil pan, transmission oil pan in the front. But in the eCVT, things are very simple, folks. It sounds very complicated, but it's not. The only service you're going to do to this is replace the fluid. Not really a complicated process. Drain plug, fill plug right there at the back. Very, very simple. And everything I look here, I have been inside so many of these engines that Everything is exactly the same. Now, this is the latest iteration of this engine, the best one in my opinion. Unfortunately, right before they drop it. That's just how this goes with emissions. Then we look at the front suspension, and this will be exactly the same in the 2023 model, simply because this has been the same the previous generation and the previous generation. Things have been very similar here. One lower control arm with a ball joint that connects with the two nuts and the one bolt. This is a hallmark design of Toyota and Lexus. Really reliable, does not have any issues. Front brakes are 2-piston calipers. Very simple, same thing as a Highlander. Actually, this is a popular upgrade for other models that do not have it because they bolt on the same. Front CV axle, McPherson strut, very simple setup. There's not really much that have changed here, despite all the marketing stuff. Yes, they have tweaked the tuning a little bit here and there, but for the most part, the design remains the same. And that's why, folks, this is a design you're going to see at 200,000 miles working perfectly without a single noise or single complaint, because they keep the same designs. You just make small tweaks to make them even better. Then we look in the center section, and you notice the gleaming absence of any kind of drive shaft or any of this stuff, because this is a hybrid model. If this was not a hybrid model, you would have a drive shaft right here. We would have a transfer case where the transmission is and all that mess. In the hybrid model, you don't have any of that. This is your drive shaft, for lack of a better word. Actually, this carries two cables. This is a high voltage cable. One of it goes to the battery, which sits just in the back inside the car. And one of them goes to the rear motor, which we're going to take a look at here in a second. Exhaust is very simple. Here's your catalytic converter. Some folks will have concerns over this catalytic converter being in this position for theft, but actually, this is the cleanup catalytic converter. This car has 3 catalytic converters. This is one of them. 2 of them are actually part of the intake of the exhaust manifold. Speaking of the exhaust manifold, this has an integrated exhaust manifold. So the exhaust manifold is actually part of the cylinder head. It's really hard to see. I'm trying to show you the best possible, but it's just a pipe that connects to the cylinder head. Very cool design, and here is that main catalytic converter, and the same story in the front. You have, there it is, that's the main catalytic converter. And we come over here, here's your fuel tank, pretty large fuel tank on these. Big muffler, this is the main muffler in the back. And if you look in this area right here, this is actually where that high voltage cable goes inside for the battery. This is the rear hybrid transaxle or rear differential in our world. This is actually what makes the hybrid model all-wheel drive. Again, super simple design that really works. Bulletproof. I have seen this similar design since 2006 when the first Highlander hybrid came out. It's literally exactly the same design. They updated things inside, but design-wise, it's the same. Drain and fill, very simple for maintenance. Axles, small axles. This is not a, a 4-wheel drive car. This is all-wheel drive. This is an assist. It helps you, so it doesn't need big, beefy axles. Then we get to the rear suspension. Very, very simplistic suspension, actually. Even though the TNGA, they have the double wishbone suspension, but it actually has been around for a while. And in the 2023 model, you're going to actually see the exact same thing, and potentially even everything you see here might be the exact same in the 2023 model, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. This is what Lexus does. This is what Toyota does. And this iteration, this configuration has been around for a very long time, and likely you're not going to see it disappear overnight, because it really works and it doesn't really need to be changed. So I hope they don't change it. And this is the F-Sport part. The diffuser, when I talk about it, it's actually not a diffuser. It's completely fake. Diffuser needs to go into the body to channel the air. This does not channel the air. And another thing is, this is a secondary resonator. That's the main muffler. This is just a resonator. Really, again, we have the open spaces. There's not really much going on here. They keep the car simple. They don't pack them up with stuff. There's no computers. There's nothing here really in the back. Few sensors for the blind spot and whatnot. But for the rest of it, really nice and simple. Let's talk about the exterior of the Lexus RX. And despite Lexus's best efforts to make this sporty looking or just muscular and strong, It just doesn't look like that. It still looks like a lovely car that is very nice, made for nice people who are not looking for a thrill, just looking for a nice place to be. Now, this is my least favorite model of the RX. Not because it's a hybrid, actually I love the hybrid model, because it is F Sport. It is the exact opposite of what you would describe the RX to be, of what made the RX one of the hallmark names in the Lexus family. And I see that same problem here. The F Sport maybe works in something like the IS, maybe the NX, but not exactly in the RX. It just doesn't work, it's too big. It doesn't work well. It should be just an appearance package and that's fine. And now we talk about the front of the Lexus RX, which has an elephant in the room. In my previous reviews of Lexus models, I have made a comment about the spindle grills. I have said that the spindle grills, I like them. I don't think they're horrendous because they give a character to these cars. You cannot mistake these cars for anything else but a Lexus when you see this thing coming from far away. Until we come to the RX. It just doesn't match the personality of the car. It doesn't match what this car needs to do. People who buy the RX, they do not really care about the spindle grille. If anything, they don't really care a lot about how the car looks and how striking it is. They care about the inside being as nice and quiet and smooth as it should be. So the spindle grille is not the nicest thing in the world, and the new model still carries the same thing. It's actually a little worse in my opinion, but that's a matter of opinion. Looks okay. I like the check mark or the reversed L on the headlights. They look cool. But one thing about this generation that it's something that's disappearing from cars slowly. It actually has fog lights. Not integrated, no, just proper fog lights. Nice tri-beam lights. This is something you want. Of course, this is a 2022 model. Has really good lights, a swivel, and all that good stuff that you expect from a Lexus. And then we talk about the side of the Lexus RX, which is understated for the most part. There's not really much going on. It resembles the previous models. But there's one thing that is very interesting. This piece of glass. Now, this is actually glass all the way to the end. But if you look on the inside of the car, it is just this section that is actually glass. I know it's not possible because you need some structural pillar here. Would have been really cool if this was actually all open. Would have gave you a very, very nice blind spot view. But it is not, it is just this. However, they used it as a design element to kind of have that coupe shape, and it goes all the way to the end. Pretty interesting touch. It's a subtle touch that just gives it a hint of modernness, but it's not all over the place. But something about the shape of it. This is shared with the Highlander. So when we look at the Highlander, this has actually a slight slope in the roof toward the end. Affects rear cargo room. That is not something very nice, which we're going to take that theme or that thought of the compromise of design to the back. Because when you look here at this angle of this glass, it's such a sharp angle. It's not really straight or a slight curve. It's big. This is a design element. Looks cool, looks okay. But the problem is this affects functionality. And that's not really the coolest thing in the planet with a car like this. Maybe it looks cool on some sports car or whatever, but not in an SUV like this. This is something I don't like. It looks nice, but it affects functionality. Then we look at the interior of the Lexus RX. And this is where this, to me at least, truly shines. So we are in a trend in the automotive world where people want technology and big screens and everything touch and everything so seamless and packed with features and all this stuff. But then when the car goes out of warranty, they complain that everything's breaking down, the reliability's down, the quality's gone. This does not have that. To be fair to this exact model here, this is the last model of this generation. Of course, it's outdated. But there's something that is not outdated here and never will be, and I potentially anticipate the new model not to have it. The simplicity of things. See, you're either the kind of buyer that's going to want the latest and greatest and all the technology and all the latest features and don't care about ride quality, don't care about noise levels, or you're going to be my kind of buyer that wants a nice place to be. I have a screen, it's not huge, but all the physical buttons that I will actually use are right here. I don't have to bother myself fumbling through a screen. I don't have to think too hard to operate this car. It's a comfortable place to be. And if that's the mentality that you have buying a car, you will love this, because the dash has a classic look to it. It's not all swooping lines and everything. It does have a double tier. It is a big, very big dash actually compared to the previous models, but it just has a classic look to it. It's a classy place to be. You have all your controls right in front of you and a very, very old school CD player. Hey, this comes from a different time. And another thing is it has a screen that sticks out of the dash, completely looks out of place. I wish this would actually hide and disappear and life is good, but it's there. Now in the center you have an old school shifter. I love this old school shifter because it worked 50 years ago. It works even better today. Why change it? Which it is getting changed. And then the not so good stuff, the Lexus touchpad. Now, you don't have to use this with this model because the screen is actually touch, but because this was a later addition to this, the screen is a little bit far away to really touch and activate by touchscreen. That's the drawback of mid-year refreshes or kind of changes as the model goes. You buy the RX for the quality of the interior, for the quietness, and for the materials, and that it is absolutely there. Everything you touch feels very nice. You look at the panel caps, you look at everything. Everything is made with love. It is a lovely place to be in, this interior. It doesn't shout, I am new and modern and cool and all this flashy in your face. It's subtle, it works. This is the kind of interior you sit in and don't have to think. From the automatic cooled and heated seats, which is one of the best features you can ever put in a car, to all your climate controls right here, to all your steering controls, very clear, nothing confusing, nothing difficult. I love this. This works. And that's what the problem with newer cars is. They're becoming too complicated for average Joe to operate. And now you end up not really operating half the features that you paid a small fortune for, driving the prices of cars up, and leaving everybody that just wants a normal car behind, having to pay all these high prices. In the back seat, I am 5'7". This is my driving position. I have plenty of room. This is a very comfortable place to be. Of course, this is a big SUV. It's not exactly a tiny one. Now you notice in the camera angle, this pillar is in my way. And that's because of that slight slope in the roof. You have that little quarter glass right here that we talked about from the outside. But getting in and out of it, you're not really in the way of you're not going to hit your head here unless you exit like this, which that is not really a normal motion. You're gonna, let's do it the older style like me. You're gonna hold in the seat and get out, and now my head is nowhere near this. So I don't think this slope will be an issue. Plenty of space here, very comfortable even for tall adults. Let's drive the Lexus RX. And something that is an absolute hallmark of the Lexus RX is just how smooth, quiet, and comfortable it is. I mean, even though this is an F-Sport model, which I don't exactly like, it does have a little bit of bumpiness, but even in this model with these bucket seats, it's super comfortable. I mean, the visibility is wonderful. You have these little quarter glasses right here that give you just that perfect visibility where the pillar does not really interfere. If the pillar is in your eyesight, you just go like this and you can see what's behind it. I love this. We're driving around town in these open country roads. It's lovely. That's what you need to feel when you drive an RX. It is a lovely place to be for nice people. And this does not disappoint because it's not fast. I mean, this is a V6 hybrid model. This is all it's got, and we're not going anywhere. But you know what? That's not why you get this car. You don't get it because it's fast. So I think in the hybrid model, you're not going to miss the V6. But what the V6 does in the non-hybrid model is how smooth it delivers that power, how smooth it takes off, and how effortless it is. In the four-cylinder, you might start feeling the engine screaming. That's a little bit of a problem. But one thing about this, it is every bit as much an RX as the very original one. Super smooth, super quiet, nothing really makes noise or rattles or is hard to operate. The touchscreens a little bit are your way because this is a later edition. You're supposed to use the touchpad, which doesn't really work very well. And the other thing that this is like Lexus's attempt to make these cars sporty with F-Sport. All this does is make this car a little bit harsher, and you feel it. Not as bad as some of the other models, but you still feel a little bit of harshness every once in a while. When you drive on really bad roads, you're gonna feel it, and that's because of the F-Sport thing. And the other thing is, we have a sport mode. When you turn it, and the hybrid model, the gauge turns into a tachometer, and yeah, it really just makes the engine go not very loud to a little bit louder, but not really still loud. It doesn't really do much. This is not a car meant for sport mode. And I would have loved if they called the normal mode comfort, or have a comfort mode instead of sport. People would have enjoyed that more. Maybe make the engine not rev up high at all or something, because this is what this car is made for, and it does it so well. I mean, I'm driving here, I'm super comfortable, this leather interior smells super nice, and it's just a very comforting drive. I could drive this for 12 hours straight and get out of it, not even feel like I did anything. It's a nice place to be. So, should you wait for the 2023 model, or should you consider this one? While still somewhat available in the current market, that might not be the case. Here's the thing with the 2023 model. Despite Lexus's best efforts, if you want to know how the 2023 model will look like, go look at the current generation NX. Technology-wise, gonna have the center stack screen, the big screen, works really good. All the physical buttons are gone. You're gonna have a few physical buttons, but majority of them are gone. And it works very well. It's a lot better than this system. But then again, you have to know your priorities with this car. Do you want a car that is easy to operate? Very simple. You don't really have any learning curve. You get in it, drive it, you're comfortable, you're happy, you don't have to think about it. Then this is your car. If you want the latest and the greatest, very nice infotainment system, big screen, everything touch, everything through, basically operate everything from your iPad, then wait for the 23, because that's the biggest update. And as far as the engines, do you want a smooth, powerful V6? Then this is your car, minus the hybrid one. Or do you not really care about this? You just want the latest and the greatest, and you don't really mind the kind of screaming engine a little bit when it's pushed. Then the new four-cylinder will not be an issue. And lastly, before we wrap up this video, if you are looking at a Highlander and wondering, should I go with an RX or a Highlander, whether this model or the newer model, same thing with the Highlander, this is exactly the same as a Highlander, but it's nicer. It almost feels like a much higher trim of the Highlander. It's more expensive, of course, but this is the difference. Otherwise, the Highlander is the same, serves the same function, it's a great car. But this is very insulated, very nice, smells nice, even the leather smells nice, the interior. Everything is just nicer here. You do have a little bit of a compromise in the back with the slope of the roof, and the F-Sport trim, not really very good. No wireless Apple CarPlay, of course, this is a little bit outdated on the technology if you're into technology, but other than that, this is a beautiful SUV to buy today if you want the V6, if you want simplicity, and you want just material quality over feature quality. Folks, I hope this video was helpful and informative. I hope you learned something new. If you like it, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my other videos. And until the next video, folks, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and you have yourself a wonderful day.